I'm a big fan of road trips, and I often prefer to take the back roads and smaller highways. I don't like driving on the interstate, and I feel like I get to see more interesting parts of the country by taking the less traveled roads. This means that I often find myself in remote locations. One night a couple years ago, I found myself on a nearly deserted country road in the heart of Tennessee. The road was nestled deep in the countryside, far away from the buzz of city life. This part of the country was sparsely populated, dotted with old, dilapidated farmhouses and expanses of woodland. The moon overhead cast long, haunting shadows, adding to the palpable sense of isolation. The road was narrow and curved through a thick forest. Tall trees stood on both sides like big, dark walls. They blocked most of the moonlight, making the road even harder to see. The trees were so close that it felt like the forest was eating up the road. I turned my gaze back to the road and was shocked to see a figure in front of me standing directly on the road's center line. In the glow of my headlights, the figure looked like a man, tall and thick-set. He had a large, scruffy beard reaching down to his chest. He wore clothes that reminded me of a farmer or a ranch hand. He was wearing a wide-brimmed hat low over his eyes. He was standing right in the path of my car, waving his arms above his head. With little time to react, I swerved to avoid a collision. The sudden change of direction caused my car to slide into a shallow ditch at the side of the road. I tried to drive out of the ditch, but my car only moved forward a bit before sliding right back. I was slipping on mud or wet grass and couldn't quite get traction. I glanced up in my rearview mirror. The man I had swerved to miss was still standing in the middle of the road. Then he began to move towards my car with a slow, deliberate stride. I briefly wondered if he was just having car trouble or needed help in some way. The thing was, I hadn't seen any other cars nearby, and something about his steady, methodical gait raised the hair on my arms. It wasn't the kind of approach you'd expect from someone in need of help. It was predatory, like a wolf closing in on its prey. As he drew closer, I could see that he was now holding something in his hand, a bat or maybe a length of a 2x4. My heart pounded like a drum against my ribs. I considered getting out and running, but I was miles from civilization. Running through an unknown forest in the middle of the night with a bat-wielding maniac on my tail didn't seem like my best course of action. I quickly locked all the doors, praying that they would provide some kind of protection, if only temporary. I revved the engine, the car lurched forward, then slid back. I checked my mirror. He was still coming. Suddenly I remembered a trick from my winters living in the Midwest. When I got stuck in a snowbank, sometimes I could get out by rocking the car back and forth. It was worth a shot. I threw the car into reverse, then drive, then reverse again, then drive, trying to get it out of the ditch. I could feel the car moving a little further with each attempt, but I was still stuck. The man kept advancing. I could see him clearly in the moonlight, getting closer and closer. When he was about 30 feet away, I felt the tires grab and my car finally lurched free from the ditch. Without wasting a second, I pressed down hard on the accelerator and sped away. I glanced at my rearview mirror and saw headlights turning on behind the man just off to the side of the road. How did I not see the car earlier? No time to think about it now. This meant there were at least two of them. The man hopped into the truck and they came tearing towards me. I was shocked at how quickly they caught up to my car. The pursuit that ensued was the most terrifying thing that's ever happened to me. My eyes kept darting between the road ahead and the rearview mirror, where I could see the truck advancing. It was a massive late-model truck that was jacked way up off the ground. I couldn't believe how fast it was. They never hit my little sedan, but they came disturbingly close a number of times. It was clear they were trying to scare me into running off the road again. I maneuvered through the winding country roads as fast as I could, desperately trying to escape. I rounded a corner and felt a glimmer of hope. An exit sign for a small town just 2 miles farther down the road. I gunned it for the next couple minutes and took the exit, hoping the truck would keep going. No luck. They followed me down the exit. The town was eerily quiet, but luckily the first gas station I came across was open. I pulled into the well-lit pumping area and stopped. The truck pulled up on the road and paused, its massive engine idling menacingly. After what seemed like an eternity, the truck whipped around and tore off. Shaking, I called the police from the relative safety of the gas station. The officer who arrived took a report, but he didn't seem particularly concerned about my ordeal. He told me they received a call like mine every 2 or 3 years, and then he said something I'll never forget. "You're lucky you got away." I asked what he meant, and all he said was, "These back roads aren't safe at night." He suggested I get on the interstate and head to the nearest major town, which was a couple hours away. After my experience with the locals, I didn't need much convincing. I thanked the officer for his help and made my way towards the highway, keeping a very close eye on my rearview mirror.
It had been another long and tiring day at the manufacturing company where I work. I'd been putting in extra hours managing the evening shift at our plant, which was located in a rather isolated industrial zone at the edge of town. As night fell, the entire area descended into an eerie stillness, punctuated only by the occasional distant hum of machinery. On this particular day, my car was in the shop for some repairs, which left me relying on Uber to get home. I live in a small town where rideshares aren't as common, so I knew I'd have a bit of a wait. The app informed me that it would take about 15 minutes for my ride to arrive. This wait, which I usually wouldn't mind, felt a bit unnerving in the silent, deserted industrial park. I was browsing on my phone when I heard footsteps. Seemingly out of nowhere, a stranger came into view, walking towards my pickup point at an unsettling speed. His pace was oddly quick, especially for someone showing up in such a desolate place at this hour. I looked around nervously to see if anybody else was nearby, but it was just the two of us. He was gaunt, as if he hadn't had a decent meal in a while, yet his clothes were clean, giving no indication that he might be homeless. A rough stubble dotted his face, adding to his unkempt appearance. His eyes were intense and a little wild. There was an uncomfortable energy to him. As he drew closer, he launched into a conversation with me, as if we were old friends catching up after years. He started by insisting that we had attended the same high school, which I knew for a fact was impossible. I went to a small school and I knew everybody there. I definitely would have recognized this guy. The strange thing was, he did mention specific things that had actually happened during high school, like when our football team won the homecoming game my senior year. I didn't want to escalate, so I just said that it had been a long time since high school, and I was sorry I didn't remember him. I had forgotten a lot of things in the last 15 years. He brushed it off, seemingly unfazed, and insisted I should remember him. He kept pushing his bizarre narrative, disregarding my increasing discomfort and moving unnervingly closer. Then, the conversation began to veer into strangely personal territory. He started mentioning events that I'd only shared in a handful of recent Instagram posts. He asked if I had a good time visiting my family in New Mexico, then asked how my girlfriend Lisa was doing. I was profoundly disturbed by his uncanny knowledge of my personal life. As this stranger continued his eerie storytelling, his insistence that I was pretending not to remember him grew. His tone turned accusatory, and his demeanor more agitated. He said everybody just wanted to forget him. He kept moving closer, to the point where I was backing up and debating if I should run or prepare to defend myself. I considered pretending that I suddenly remember him, but I worried that would backfire if he pressed me for details. The only thing that could make this situation worse would be to get caught in a lie. In the middle of my rising panic, I saw my Uber driver pulling up. I told the stranger that it was good seeing him again, but I had to go. With a sense of relief washing over me, I quickly got into the car. The stranger, however, wasn't finished. He opened the passenger door of the car, and while he didn't attempt to climb in, he was making it impossible for us to drive away. I quickly informed the driver about the situation, saying I didn't know this man, and that we needed to leave immediately. The driver sensed the urgency of the situation and managed to maneuver away, effectively denying the stranger access to the vehicle. As we sped away from the pickup point, the stranger stood there, smiling joylessly at me. Even as the distance between us grew, I couldn't shake off the fear he had instilled. Once I reached home, I was shaken and disturbed. Sleep eluded me as I replayed the creepy encounter, wondering what could have possibly been wrong with the man and why he knew so much about me. After the events of that night, I locked down all of my social media and invested in some personal protection measures. Even though I've never encountered the stranger again, I still find myself looking over my shoulder every time I walk to my car at night.